Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. You can find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. With me is not Kyle Yates. Kyle is supposed to be here. He is feeling under the weather today, so frankly, we just have to, power on, move on without him. But we are very lucky because we have a great guest today. It's Paige Dimakos over from the Draft Network. You can find her on Twitter at _sports page. That's Paige. Thanks for joining me, Paige.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I see that Kyle is ditching out on me today, but that's okay. I'll only take some shots at him later, or maybe I'll make fun of him on the podcast today a little bit.
I said that he was under the weather. He actually just said, "Wait," he didn't realize you were coming on, and he asked out of the podcast right before we were here. In fact, he saw your name pop up right as we were about to record, and then he just bounced. It was where'd Kyle go? Okay, I gotta go forward. But I mean, if you were here to insult Kyle, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I do it. Anyway, it's going to be great. Okay, so for today's show, we're going to break down yesterday's game between the Raiders and the Saints. We're going to be talking trades. We've got this great thing about the most traded players. We'll talk about why, what we think of them, some buy low, sell high candidates, rest of season risers and fallers, and then a listener mailbag. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So as I said, we're going to be talking, as you can see, a lot of trades today. And when we do, I'm going to be talking about some trade tools that we have on the site, but one of our best things are both our trade analyzer and our trade finder. But our trade analyzer in particular over at My Playbook is really something you want to see whether or not a trade helps your team. That's great. The trade analyzer does that. Do you want to view your power rankings before and after a trade? Fantastic. Trade analyzer does that as well. You want support for uneven trades. You want support for trading your draft picks in dynasty leagues. Great. You've got that too. Trade Analyzer, again, is available at My Playbook along with a million other tools. That's fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Now, only our premium subscribers can use the Trade Analyzer. So if you're not one, you can get our Hall of Fame package. That is our highest tiered subscription package worth $65 for the rest of the season free. That includes Waiver Assistant, Start Sit Assistant, ton of other tools that you can use to win your league, as well as our DFS tools. Just go to fantasypros.com/offers. That's fantasypros.com/offers. All right, Paige, Raiders 34, Saints 24. Derek Carr, pretty efficient, 28 of 38, 282 yards and 3 touchdowns. One to Zay Jones, who apparently still plays football in the NFL. One to Alec Ingold, and one to Darren Waller, and that's kind of the guy. 16 targets, 12 catches, 103 yards, and a touchdown. I don't really know what to say, Paige, about Darren Waller, other than, I guess you'd prefer Travis Kelce, probably George Kittle if he's healthy. Is he third rest of season for you? Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz, where does he slot in here? He's getting a crazy target share.
Yeah, he's got to be third, right? And he might even flirt a lot of weeks with that 1-2 spot, I think, just because of the target share and with Kittle's injury and everything. So you have to love what you see from him. Such a great story and everything that comes along with him. So you like seeing that. I had the same thought about Zay Jones. I said, hang on a second, Zay Jones still plays football? There's no way. Not that guy. It's not the same Jones, right? I'm like, no. Yeah. We tried to make this a thing a long time ago in fantasy, and it never happened. So I was just waiting for that. But to Darren Waller, I think you have to be so excited where you drafted him in comparison to where a lot of people went up and got Kittle. And with all the injuries the San Francisco 49ers have, even if he comes back, there's probably a good chance, and Kittle will come back. There's a pretty good chance, I think, that Waller will be up in that 2 spot a lot. So definitely 3, but I'm pushing him up in a lot of rankings each and every week because of Kittle's. What are they going to do in San Francisco? You can go take out Kittle and they don't have anything else, man. So
Jordan Reed time. Jordan Reed all day long. Let's go. Let's keep it going. No, I agree. If Kittle's healthy, obviously, I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo, by the way, is going to play. There's all this optimism, even though I believe it was a high ankle sprain or whatever he had, but there's optimism that he can play against the Giants, which is probably not necessary, to be honest. Nick Mullins is a perfectly capable quarterback, but yeah, I don't know. He's right up there, and I'm just gonna put it out there. I advocated for essentially passing on that whole sort of middle row of tight ends there after Kittle. I was fine to take Kittle and Kelce in the second round, but I was sort of like Mark Andrews in the third, and then you've got Darren Waller and you've got Zach Ertz. I liked a lot of late tight ends this year, including guys who are performing like Jonnu Smith and stuff like that. But man, it is hard with the way Mark Andrews he was a little quiet, obviously, in week 2, but he was great in week 1. And with the way Darren Waller is right now, I don't know. That was probably the right way to go, is just to take these guys, lock them up, because, man, they're great. But with that, is there any, other than Zay Jones, of course, who is now probably a top 20 wide receiver going forward, is there any other Raiders wide receiver that you want to own? That's a joke about Zay Jones, by the way. Don't at me. I'm kidding. Is there any Raiders wide receiver that you want to roster in fantasy?
There is not. I know that a lot of people that pay attention to the Draft Network are going to be really pissed off at me for not naming some rookie wide receivers that they're really excited about. I think the ball's going to get spread around a lot, and you're not really going to know what you're going to get week in and week out. And I hate playing the guessing game, man. It's nightmare fuel for me. So obviously, you love Josh Jacobs, right? You saw Rashard get in the end zone, and he's going to have some space as well in this offense. But you saw Nelson Aguilar get passed to at one point, and Bryan Edwards is looking really good, and you got Hunter Renfrow. There's a lot there. It seems like Derek Carr is moving it around, with the exception of one person, and that's Darren Waller. So that's the guy I want. If you have him, you're starting him, you feel good about it, but I don't really think I'm going to mess around with anybody else. And I'm sorry, TDN listeners. I know y'all want me to give you hot takes about rookies, but I'm not doing it.
I mean, I think I'd still roster Ruggs. It's been a disappointing beginning to the season, but I mean, I can see him taking off as we get, a few games in and stuff like that. But you're right. I mean, Carr, and he's played well. He is just finding the open receiver, and he's doing what he needs to do. It doesn't matter who that is. Nelson Aguilar, as you mentioned, and Zay Jones, as we've talked about. So for me, I'd still roster Ruggs, but he's moving down my rest of season rankings, just in case he's got that explosion that comes a couple weeks in that sometimes happens with rookie receivers.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I trust me. This is the TDN crew is constantly they're battling with us about these rookie wide receivers, and we always tell them, hey guys, you want that to happen, but that's not the football that's gonna happen. So we get it, we understand, but you can keep him, but I think you're gonna be disappointed in where you thought you would get him this year.
All right. Let's go to the other side of the ball here. Saints, whether or not it was Michael Thomas, whether or not it was just on the road. I mean, Drew Brees, 312 yards, that's good. A touchdown and a pick. He doesn't... I'm having shades of Peyton Manning's last year a little bit. I mean, he's just not that bad, but he I don't know. Doesn't look like there's any, zip. He doesn't look that great. Are you concerned? I mean, Brees is probably a borderline QB1 anyway coming in, but are you concerned about Drew Brees?
Yeah, I wasn't rostering him going into this because if you watched the last few games of last season, you saw it start to slow down for him. And I think a lot of the dink and dunk that happens up front with Alvin Kamara, right, where you're watching him throw within 5 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage is working for him. And you see Kamara kind of, obviously he leads them in receiving and rushing in this game. But how frustrated are you if you're an Emmanuel Sanders owner? I mean, Sanders is a guy who came back from an injury. I've touted incredible to come back, have the speed, do what he does, super talented. But Brees doesn't even go his way. I mean, that is because I just don't see, as you said, Peyton Manning noodle arm coming down. I think that's it's not that bad yet, but he definitely doesn't have what he had. And that's a big concern if you've got some of these receiving options.
Yeah, I was definitely the guy of the three of us here with Yates and Tags to certainly advocate for Emmanuel Sanders in draft season. I just thought, this is great. Brees has never really had a second wide receiver, reliable guy, just going to be the possession guy. And Sanders did score a touchdown in the first game, but he played terrible right now. He even had the block in the back. He had drops, just absolutely terrible. But Tre'Quan Smith here did play pretty well. 7 targets, 5 catches, 86 yards. Is he a guy who you think can have value going forward, even if Michael Thomas returns soon?
I just don't want to buy in yet. I saw it. I was like, okay, which of these guys is going to show up? And I think, listen, people are going to be excited about him. I just think you're going to be in for a roller coaster ride because I don't think that the Saints offense is ever going to be what it used to be. And I think we've always, and I was like you, I thought, oh my God, you're adding Emmanuel Sanders to this offense, right? Like Drew Brees, Michael Thomas on the other side, he's going to take the number one coverage. Sanders is going to have all these opportunities. it's just not clicking yet. And listen, it's week 2, right? We're headed into week 3. There might still be opportunities for Sanders to come in, but I think Smith is just he's gonna have some weeks, but you're gonna overall be disappointed because this is gonna be the dink and dunk show with Alvin Kamara, and that's just what you're gonna get this season, because I think that's what Drew can do at this point.
Yeah, I think what we really need to do is see again what it looks like now when Michael Thomas returns, because week 1 he wasn't that involved. Sanders did score the touchdown. He wasn't heavily involved, but he did score the touchdown. Now with Thomas out, that really does change the offense, so I would like to see that. Also, Latavius Murray here very briefly, just 3 carries after getting 15 in week 1. A little game scripted out, didn't go the way the Saints wanted. But this is the Alvin Kamara show, as you've sort of mentioned, so he's the guy. All right, let's go to most traded players here, because this is something that's interesting. I talked about my playbook with FantasyPros. So what users do is they import their teams into our site so they can get advice sort of as how they're doing. And one thing that I'm able to see, and I write an article about this every week, is the most traded players for teams that are imported into my playbook. I can sort it by date. So what I've done is I've sorted this by Sunday through today. So just basically things that have happened since the games have been played, and who are the most traded players. So what I'd like to do, Paige, if you're up for it, is to talk about these guys, a couple of these guys who have been traded the most, talk about why we think if we'd be trying to buy low, who we might be willing to give up for them and stuff like that. You up for that?
Yeah, I'm totally in.
Good. I always ask things like that, by the way, and it doesn't, if you said no, I'd probably have to do it anyway. So that's just me being nice. But I Tags teases me about that all the time. Let's start with the number 1 traded player in my playbook since Sunday, and that's Joe Mixon. Now, of course, he played on Thursday. He's been traded 283 times in our teams since Sunday. Mixon is kind of weird. He's only got 5 catches through 2 games. He's got 40 touches overall, 157 total yards. It hasn't been disastrous for Mixon necessarily, but it obviously hasn't been quite as good as fantasy managers hoped, especially given how he finished last season. And you've got Joe Burrow, but the offensive line is really not playing well. So if you are rostering Mixon, or even if you're not, is he someone who you think fantasy managers should be trying to buy low on, or is this somebody to get rid of before things get worse even?
It's interesting because I woke up this morning and somebody's trying to float a trade my way, right, this morning, and Joe Mixon's a part of that. So because of injuries to the running back position for me, yep, I'm in a position where I'm going to buy low because of the injuries that I've sustained. And I think you will see Joe Mixon potentially get more involved, and I'm willing to take the risk here, but it's more out of the fact that with Saquon Barkley out and Christian McCaffrey out 4 to 6 weeks, and some of these, and the running back depth is already not there. The target, he is the focal point from a running back position. He's just, this offense is much different than it's been in the past because Joey B is out here throwing the ball 50 times a game, which is unbelievable, right? And yep, that's not, I don't think that is sustainable. That's the way I'll say it. The weather will change, things will get different, and I think they're going to start running Mixon a little more. So I'm comfortable with it, with all things considered. So I'm going to do this trade. So I'm giving you guys, before I accept the trade on my sleeper app this morning, I'm telling you guys that I'm doing that. So I'm accepting the trade because I need it, quite frankly, at this point, and I have crazy wide receiver depth. So I'm okay letting some wide receivers go off the roster and adding to my arsenal of running backs.
So let me see, because I agree with you to an extent. I think that a guy like Mixon at this point, beggars can't be choosers is not the right way to say it, but I just mean there are just a shortening supply of guys who are going to get that volume, and I do think that he will get more involved. I don't think he's going to be game scripted out. It was really frustrating to see Gio Bernard come in sort of, when they went to the pass catching mode, because Mixon is a good pass catcher. He can be involved in that thing. Let me ask you something, because I have moved him down my rest of season rankings. He's roughly 13th for me. Would you prefer Joe Mixon or Chris Carson going forward? If you basically could have either one of those in a trade, somebody came to you and said, you can have either one of these guys, whoever you like more.
I think I'd take Chris Carson going forward. I liked Chris Carson a little bit more than I think everybody else did going into the season, just because of if maybe it's because I believe that he could fix the fumbling issues, and maybe that's naive of me, but I have seen him play, especially week 1. You saw a big performance from him. I do think that he is going to play a larger part in this offense, and I do feel more comfortable with where the Seahawks are, because they are going to need to put up points, because that defense is not good. Jamal Adams, good. The rest of the defense, not very good. And Russell Wilson is going to continue to put up. They're gonna be on this ridiculous pace where they're going to put up basically 40 points a game. And I think you're going to see that offense be in a lot of games. They're going to be in shooting matches. They're going to have to do that. Whereas Cincinnati is going to be, although Joe has had a good start, that offensive line isn't very good. You've got issues across the ball. The defense isn't very good. That team isn't going to be able to do what the Seahawks are, and that's where I have the faith in Chris Carson because of that.
All right, let's talk about another player on the top 10 most traded list since Sunday, and that is Mixon's teammate, and that's A.J. Green, who's gotten off to this really weird sort of start where, the targets, the air yards, it's all there. It's all great, except for the fact that of the 22 targets and of the 50,000 air yards, 8 catches for 80 yards. So talk to me about A.J. Green, because I think this is a guy who is probably going, he is being traded a ton. He's a guy who fantasy managers really diverge on with their opinions going forward. Tags, especially Yates too, really high in him coming into the season. So how are you viewing him right now?
Yeah, team high, 22 targets through 2 weeks with Joe Burrow, but I want none of this, man. I want none of this. I don't know if you are watching his snaps and his targets, he does not look like the same person, and that's because that guy has played in 7 football games since 2017. It's really hard to come in and be that guy. And although he's getting those targets, I just don't think he has it anymore. I think that's what you're seeing. He's a step slower. He's not the same guy. And Joe Burrow's going to have to start going other places because he's not taking advantage. And they've got a bunch of other really good weapons in that receiving core to start feeding the ball to. So I'm out with AJ Green. And this is a guy that I wanted to believe in. Right, I feel like I talk myself into that each and every year. And I listen to the pod, and I know the guys talk themselves into it in the offseason as well. It's one I think you got to stay away from with how many other wide receivers there are and how much depth you should have on your lineup. And I think he's been given the opportunities and he hasn't taken advantage of it. And I just don't think you're going to continue to see that.
So would you prefer A.J. Green or his teammate Tyler Boyd then?
I would prefer Tyler Boyd moving forward. I would prefer Tyler Boyd. I think there's more upside there, and I think A.J. Green has been given the opportunities, and he's not taking advantage of them. It's strictly football. Like he is, you're watching him, and he doesn't look the same. I just don't think he's going to be that player anymore.
So I'm a little torn on it, okay? Because obviously you follow the targets. That is really what's great to see. On Thursday night, he just didn't look like himself. I completely agree. He dropped some balls, absolutely. Part of me wonders whether he got a little banged up. It looked like just the wind knocked out of him on that first catch where he caught it, but just out of bounds. And maybe he got a little nicked up something. I'm in between. Let's just say that's a cold take, which I love to do right now. I just love to throw and be like, I'm not going crazy. I'm not off. I'm not trying to target him and buy low. But I think I'm a little more optimistic on him than you are, just because, again, if he is going to see these targets, if he's going to see them downfield like he is, unless they basically realize within a game or two to be like, nope, you know what, man, you're done over here. I like Tyler Boyd a lot. I hope Mixon gets more involved. They're going to be playing from behind the whole time. They're going to have to throw the ball. I'm not jumping at, obviously John Ross or Higgins or anything like that. They're down CJ Uzama, so I'd be willing to buy a little bit more, but I'm not rushing out to be like, this is a prime buy low opportunity, because I do see exactly the same warning signs that you do.
For sure. And let's just be honest, there's a almost 95 to 100% chance he's not going to make it through 16 games. This guy that's
also fair.
So that's the other part of this that frustrates you, is because you already saw him pull up. I don't know what it was. I think maybe that first hit or something where he seemed to be kind of lumbering a little bit throughout that game. Yeah. And I'm going, no, thank you. Tyler Boyd, 7 for 72 and a touchdown. Give me that. And more when AJ Green inevitably isn't healthy to be rostered the rest of the season.
as someone who is myself old and often injured, I tend to side with those guys a little bit more probably than most fantasy managers, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah, again, I'm caught in between a little bit. This is a game that's coming up this weekend that I really want to see when they play Philadelphia, because I do think that that's something where, if he kind of looks lumbering again, I'm definitely going to move off. Let's go to the third most traded player this week, and that is Leonard Fournette. So you had this situation where they had a wonderful matchup against Carolina. Ronald Jones looked like he was taking control of the backfield, but we stress this. Ronald Jones has control of that backfield until he fumbles or misses a block, and then it's anybody's ball game. Leonard Fournette then Jones wasn't benched, but he was, for all intents and purposes, benched. He got like 5 touches or something after the fumble, which again, he was not charged with. It was Brady's fumble, which probably only makes Brady even more mad. But 12 carries, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus 4 catches on 5 targets for 13 yards against the Panthers. So I guess, how are you viewing Leonard Fournette? Is this his backfield? Are you trying to trade for him? If you have him, are you trying to sell high given what happened this past weekend?
Yeah, I'm currently shopping him in one league just to see if I can get somebody to bite on that performance. But I know this head coaching staff and team very well, and they're going to do what's best for their football team. And that means they're going to continue to, y'all recall what it's like when you have a New England running back and it drives you insane because they move the running backs around. You're going to get a little bit of that. You're going to get a little bit of, hey, the game script is allowing Ronald Jones to kind of have his way. And like you said, the second he misses a block, the second he's not, Bruce is going to pull him out. They're going to put Leonard Fournette in. It's still Ronald Jones's backfield, kinda. Right? Like, that's the way I'm going to say it. Like, Leonard Fournette is going to get a good amount of touches, and I think you're going to see more of that as the season progresses. But I will caution you, the best thing for this football team is to have both guys running with fresh legs, and that's going to drive you nuts. And I'm telling you, that is exactly, Bruce told you that's what he's going to do, and that's what he's going to do. And it's going to drive you insane. There's fantasy value for both of them, but this isn't going to turn into, I don't envision, with the exception of injuries or horrible play, they're both going to have value, and that's going to drive you nuts as a fantasy owner.
So neither one of them, you think, at really any point, absent injury, is going to be basically an RB2 that you can roll out there each and every week?
The thing is, it's hard to say. Like, I was like, for sure not RB1. RB2, yes, because there's no good running backs, man. Like, this season, it's slim pickings. You're going to have to go with one of these guys. I think they both could end up being RB2s. That's where I see it.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, you definitely could be right. They both could be. But for me, I think your points about the way New England used to run, and I think the way this is going to run, spot on. I think that's exactly what it is. We don't know which one it's going to be, and because of that, I kind of feel right now like I'm not going to be able to roll either one out as an RB2 going forward, just for the exact reasons you do. And I do think that this is going to be a situation where, look, man, even if it was sort of something like, congratulations, Leonard Fournette, you had a great performance last week against the softest of matchups.
Yes.
This is now, we are going to favor you. We like you. Ronald Jones is going to go to the side. You fumble that ball, Leonard Fournette, and Ronald Jones is just going to get the next chance. Like, I firmly believe that is how Tampa Bay is going to operate. So if I had to choose one going forward, and I want to ask you this, if you had to choose one, you can only roster one. You have both. You're in this horrible crunch. You have to drop one or whatever. If Fournette would be the guy, for me, going forward rest of season, but I honestly, I don't think that I'm going to be able to roll with either one of them reliably each week. So if you had to choose one, who would you choose?
Going forward, I think Fournette. I'm with you on that. I think there's more upside there, and I think he's going to end up out getting more of the workload here as they continue on. But it's going to frustrate the hell out of you. They're both going to have their opportunities. So just prepare yourself. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. All right. So I think we're on the same page, other than the fact that I'm probably, as I'm picking and choosing between the running backs that I can rely on and can't, I feel like Fournette and Ronald Jones probably are going to fall a little beyond where I'm comfortable. And that's going to lead me into another player that's on our most traded players list. That's Mark Ingram. So he's got 19 carries on the season for 84 yards. He did get into the end zone in this most recent game on a Wildcat play, and he's got 2 catches for 22 yards. How do you feel about Mark Ingram going forward? Is he a guy who you are like, man, he scored that touchdown, I'm going to get rid of him while I can? Or is he a guy who you think, fantasy managers don't like him? They just don't, obviously. They love J.K. Dobbins. They love their rookie, of course. So what's your feeling here on Mark Ingram?
I wish that I could get rid of him, but I think because of what you said, fantasy managers are not gonna. I don't think they're gonna bite. I think they've seen this, and there's obviously so much excitement about the rookie and Gus Edwards, right? Obviously, still playing a large part in this offense. That's you on top of, oh, by the way, Lamar Jackson leads the team in rushes. So it's you. Right. You have to look at this and go, good luck. Right? There's way too many mouths to feed in that backfield, on top of the fact that you have a quarterback that rushes the football 16 times per game. Good luck. I hate trying to play the guessing game with running backs. I hate that. It's my least favorite thing to do in fantasy football, and I got Mark Ingram in a later round, and he's a guy that I have on my bench, and I am toying each week. I ended up starting him this week because of some injury stuff, but he's not a guy. He's going to be a guy where I'm going to be sitting there week in and week out trying to play the guessing game, and it's going to drive me insane all season long. So I tried. And I'm going to continue to try. So if there's people in my league that are listening to this podcast, please take my trade. But I envision that they won't.
Yeah. I mean, Ingram is a really tough case for me because he didn't get all that high a percentage of the carries last year.
No.
I mean, Gus Edwards, right? He factored in completely last year, as did Hill. And so the fact that Dobbins did not get a touch in this last game until the second half. Just bizarre. Do not go buying J.K. Dobbins, by the way, again, for all the reasons essentially that Paige said, except for the fact that I do think that Mark Ingram is going to be the guy, if there is a back to own, at least for now, and I think probably for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
It's going to be Ingram, right? I mean, again,
I agree with you on that. I just think you're going to be frustrated because of what you're going to see because it's game script, right? There's a reason that J.K. Dobbins was able to have so many touches in week 1, and that's because they went up big and they want to get their rookie some touches, right? They want to keep Mark Ingram fresh. This team is on a one-track mind to win the Super Bowl, so they're going to do what's best for them. Keeping all those guys fresh, getting their rookie integrated, and it's the Gus bus this week, right? Next week, it's probably going to be Mark Ingram. The following week, it's probably going to be J.K. Dobbins. Like, that's what you're going to get week in and week out. I do think there's still, listen, I drafted him. I think there's still value, obviously, with Mark Ingram. It's just not what you had last season. You're not going to get that.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so. And I think fantasy managers weren't drafting him expecting. I mean,
you shouldn't
he wasn't
have.
going to score.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't going to score 15 touchdowns. Again, certainly not 5 receiving touchdowns. But I am, I think, a little more optimistic than almost anybody else that's out there right now in his rest of the season, because I do think he's the type of guy who, you give him 12 touches, given that offense, I do think that he is going to score an inordinate amount of touchdowns, because I do think they trust him near the goal line. And again, might be just Lamar Jackson. But I think what you're saying is correct. It's not somebody who I'm like, yeah, give me Mark Ingram. I'm going out there and targeting him. But I also think I was a little surprised to see him on the most traded list, because I do think that I don't know. Nobody seems to value him, right? Everybody's just like, whatever. So maybe people are trading him for a song.
There's not a lot of running backs, man. So I think people need to just I think people need to know this is going to be and I'm going to actually listen to myself. Hold on to some of these running backs, because it's only week 2 and we're already down a lot here. And it's go look at the waiver wire for running backs. It's not pretty.
Yep. It is a rough sledding out there. Let's go one more player on the most traded list. Then we'll go to a little buy low, sell high. Odell Beckham Jr. He is 5th on trades since Sunday. 228 trades in my playbook just in the last day and a half. He obviously has a bounce back game, 4 catches for 74 yards, but just 6 targets here. Now, we saw what the Ravens defense really looks like. They are death on wide receivers. So you can maybe write off his first game, even though we saw 10 targets. And again, he does catch the touchdown here, but only 4 catches, only 6 targets. So how do you feel about Beckham? Are you buying low, or are you trying to sell him if you have, after this touchdown, or how are you valuing him in the trade market?
Yeah, I would sell him. And that's because you saw exactly what the Cleveland Browns need to do to win football games, and that's run the damn ball. That's what they need to do to win. They're not gonna play this high-flying offense throwing the ball all around if they want to win football games. And they have two really good running backs. They're going to go to those guys. That offensive line is going to play better, and that's the recipe for this team to win. And Odell is going to have games, but he's not going to be in the territory where you want him to be. So I'm selling. If you can, I'm selling.
I will summarize my thoughts by saying ditto. I was low on him coming in. And again, this is why the offense, to work effectively, is not going to be Beckham seeing the 10 targets a game that he has seen throughout his career. It's just that's not what they want to do. That's not what they're going to do. If he's going to see the 6 targets, which I think is probably the range that he's going to find himself, given all the other options, given how much they're going to lean on the run, it's just not going to happen. Like he was being valued. Some of the guys here had him top 10. There was just no way. I completely agree with that. So if you do have Beckham, if you can capitalize on the fact that he caught that touchdown and he looked good on Thursday night, I definitely would. All right. Let's go here to a little buy low, sell high. We can each just name one player. If you have more, you can name more. But let's talk one player who's out there who you feel like you might want to target as a buy low opportunity, any position. Who do you have there?
Buy low we talked about him a little bit already, and that was Joe Mixon. I think that's one guy that I think is going to continue to play a little bit more a part of this offense. And I know, as we talked about, running back position is really slim, and this is a guy who's going to get volume. And at a certain point, that's going to have to play a part for this guy. And I keep waiting. I keep waiting for him to be more involved in the passing game because he is electric as a pass catching back as well. So this is a guy that I'm buying in on, and I would say another guy, I'll throw him out there to you, is wide receiver Allen Robinson, who I think is going to play a bigger part moving forward. So because Anthony Miller, I don't know if you watched that Bears game, but I'm a Chicago girl. I don't envision that Anthony Miller is going to play the same part moving forward, and they're going to go back to a little bit more Allen Robinson, and then I think the rookie Mooney's going to play a part as well. So those are the two buy low candidates for me.
Well, Anthony Miller the game wasn't pretty, but he's only playing 40% of the snaps anyway. Yep. I mean, they've got to go. You've got Allen Robinson. Go to Allen Robinson. I mean, I think Robinson might have seen 9 targets, if I'm remembering correctly, in this last game. So, hopefully those targets come to fruition, but that's a great call with Robinson if fantasy managers are getting frustrated. With Mixon, this is what I want to sort of point out. I completely agree he's a buy low because I do like his feature. I will say, as a buy low, I want to sort of clarify how I feel about it. I had him, I think, 7th, maybe 8th coming into the season, and now you've got McCaffrey, of course, who's dropped down a bit. I have him lower than that now. I've lowered him in my rest of season rankings to roughly 13th about. I'm going to tweak it probably as the day goes on. Still, though, I think he's a buy low because I think if you asked the average fantasy manager out there, they're just like, I'm not dealing with Joe Mixon anymore. This is ridiculous. I mean, he doesn't. Nothing's going on with that Bengals team. They're not giving him the work. He can't get any ground game going. He's being benched for Gio Bernard when they fall behind. I think the perception of Mixon does not match what his actual value is going to be, even though I have moved him down as to where I had him before the season. Part of that is just moving guys up. Miles Sanders is healthy, things like that. Jonathan Taylor, of course, is up. But I agree with you there that I do think that the perceived value on Mixon does not match his actual value. I want to ask you about mine because we were talking about rookie wide receivers.
Oh boy.
And it was like, no rookies. But there is a rookie wide receiver right now that I think you can buy low on, and I would, and that's Jerry Jeudy. Now, you've got the Cortland Sutton injury. So maybe fantasy managers out there will be like, well, this is the only guy out there. So I'm not going to sell him low or anything like that. But maybe people are worried about the fact that it's Jeff Driscoll and Blake Bortles just signed with the team. So God help us if he takes over as a quarterback. I'm not really worried about Jeudy. He's already has 15 targets. That's a pretty nice number. He only caught 8 of them. He had a little bit of the dropsies in the first game, 118 yards. Now without Sutton, I think as they rotate their receivers in and out, I think he's going to play a little bit more out of the slot, which I think is going to benefit him. He's got the Bucks. He's got the Jets coming up. I think this is a guy who, given the Cortland Sutton is out for the season, Jeudy is a guy who I'm enamored with as a talent. I agree with you that I usually fade rookie wide receivers, but Jeudy is a guy who I think if you can buy low on, you should. So go ahead, Trash rookie wide receivers. I'm ready for you.
I'm not going to trash this rookie wide receiver. I would say I'm like almost in with you. I'm like not all the way in. I'm almost in. Mostly because you have to have some level of concern with the Jeff Driscoll. If it's Blake Bortles, good luck, right? I think that creates a whole nother dynamic. I will say, Jeff Driscoll will sling this ball around.
Correct.
And I think there's going to be people that maybe didn't watch what he did last season, right? When he was tapped in, but he's going to sling the ball around. And I think Jeudy's going to have some of the targets, especially with Cortland Sutton out. So I'm hesitantly excited about it because I've seen Driscoll and I know he's going to sling the ball around, and as far as rookies go, he's about as pro ready as they come, right? And that's where you looked at him and you go, yeah, okay, he's going to be fine. And I'm excited for him in this offense, even with Jeff Driscoll, just not Blake Bortles. If that happens, I'm out. I'm all the way out.
Okay. First of all, when someone is hesitantly excited about an opinion that I give, I'm all in on that. I will take that all day long. End of story. But let me just hammer down a couple of the points that you just made. If, God help us, Blake Bortles is the starting QB in Denver, correct. I would like to revise my opinion, and then you should just get rid of Jerry Jeudy because I'm not going to do that. But your point on Driscoll is great, and that's exactly what I think. I think people are going to hear Jeff Driscoll, and they're like, I'm not buying anybody. I can't do anybody in this offense. It's Jeff Driscoll. Nah, man. Jeff Driscoll is going to sling it. He's not afraid. He's going to do it, and he looked fine in the game against Pittsburgh. I mean, he had production, so I don't really feel... I wasn't a huge Drew Lock guy this year anyway, so I don't really see this as a huge downgrade, and without Sutton, he's a guy who I'm willing to go after. So I will take hesitantly agreeing or whatever you've got for me. I will definitely take that. Okay, who are you selling high on right now coming in?
Who am I selling high on? Okay, so I've got a couple of guys that I was looking at here, and Stefon Diggs was one guy that I had on my list, mostly because I think... Listen, I'm excited about the Josh Allen experience. I'm a part of it, right? I rostered Josh Allen. I think they're going to continue to go all around there. And you're going to see you got John Brown played a part in that game, but I don't think you're going to see 400 yards of offense from Josh Allen moving forward. And that means that you're not going to see what you saw from Stefon Diggs. And I think that's a good opportunity for you to sell high coming off a really fantastic performance for that offense as a whole. I still think I don't want Bills Mafia to come after me. I'm all in on Josh Allen with this football team. I just don't think you're going to need to do what you did this week to have to win football games. And I don't think, especially as the weather turns, you know what Buffalo's like, you're not going to be throwing for 400 yards in games.
So let me just put an actual number on. I mean, I don't know if you do rest of season rankings or anything like that. Is Diggs a guy who you think can be a wide receiver, a borderline wide receiver, 2 going forward? I mean, when you say sell high, that's what I really want to hammer down, because Tags and I talked about this on our Sunday night recap show, and he had him like a borderline wide receiver 3 coming into last week. I had him 22nd in my rest of season ranking. So like a low end wide receiver 2. Where do you value him when you're talking about selling high?
I would say low end wide receiver 2. I think you can put him in that category.
Okay. And if you can sell him higher than that, you're basically saying that's when you would sell him, right?
Yeah. I think that's why I'm trying to take advantage of this last performance, because everybody's freaking out about what they saw against that Miami Dolphins defense. And although there was a lot of excitement about it, watch the tape. That defense is not what everybody thought it was going to be. So I think with Buffalo, there was a lot. If you watch the whole game, of which I watched this entire game, because that fourth quarter was shockingly one of the more entertaining parts of this entire weekend with the back and forth. I just don't think you're going to see that when you with this football team moving forward. And so I'm trying to take advantage of this performance where I'm going, okay, I'm cool trying to get Stefon Diggs off the roster and trying to get somebody to bite, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the point I kind of want to make, because I think that people sometimes hear sell high or trade high and they think, oh, trade.
Yeah.
You're telling me I have to trade, right?
No.
Like, all right, I gotta get rid of Stefon Diggs.
No.
Whatever I can get.
Correct. You gotta get something good back. And I do get this a lot from people on Twitter, and I'm sure you do as well, where it's like, hey, should I trade insert whatever player? And I say my response back is, for what? right?
Right.
That's always my response, because I like Stefon Diggs a lot, but I'm trying to take advantage of the top tier performance he just had, and specifically to my roster, I need running backs, and I'm going to try and manipulate something here to get somebody to give me something back, because I need depth because of the injuries that have been sustained. Be careful. Yep. Don't buy it. I'm not telling you. I like Stefon Diggs. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that does happen a ton. It's like, oh, I heard Paige say that I should sell Stefon Diggs, and I'm going to sell him, and I'm going to get nothing in return. And then I'm going, that's not what I told you to do.
Well, I hope it's okay when I tweet out this episode. I'm going to say, just to be clear, Paige thinks you should dump Stefon Diggs for whatever you can get for him.
Feel free.
Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead. I love it.
Did I sum that up
Perfect.
right? Okay, good. I want to make sure.
Perfect.
Okay, so my sell high is not like an exciting super name, but I have seen sort of, when people are asking me, who do I start? What do I do at the tight end position? It's TJ Hockenson, who people are, he's caught all 9 of his targets for 118 yards and a touchdown. He's got a 13% target share without Kenny Galladay. Like, that's just not going to get it done. And again, this is a year where I think you've got a lot of really interesting tight ends that are out there. I liked Hayden Hurst a lot. People were really down on Jared Cook, but he continues to score touchdowns. Tyler Higbee looks like he's for real. Hayden Hurst is a guy who I really like. Noah Fant is really getting it done. Jonnu Smith is Kyle Yates' best friend, and he is tearing it up. Dallas Goedert is getting a ton of targets. Mike Gesicki had a huge day in this last game. I think there are a lot of tight ends that are out there. And I think TJ Hockenson comes with this great thing where he was highly touted as a rookie, and he had that huge first game, and then he basically dealt with injuries. So people were really excited about him coming in. And I think the fact that he is producing, not crazy, but he is producing, and he's getting catching all of his targets, and he's got his touchdown already. I think people might be like, okay, I feel the breakout. I feel where this is coming. And again, he's just not getting the target share that I think he's going to need to justify where, again, I think his perceived value is. So for me, if you can, quote, sell him high, I would. I don't know what the tight end market is right now, because there are a lot of guys out there. But if you can sell him, he's a guy who I'd be willing to go. And I think there are guys on the waiver wire. I mean, we talked about it. Drew Sample is out there. Dalton Schultz apparently is going to get 10 targets a game. What do I know? So I think that TJ Hockenson is a guy who, if you can trade him for anything remotely usable, I think I would, because I think his perceived value probably doesn't match his actual value.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm not even hesitantly excited. I'm all the way in on this take here with Hockenson, mostly because I agree with you listen, rookie tight end last year, lots of excitement about it, tons of talent. I want to be very clear, because I said, the TDN people, they'll come for me, right? So it's tons of talent with Hockenson. But last year set you up for this big set of failure, because everybody who played the Arizona Cardinals, you should start their tight end, even if it was Paige Dimakos starting at tight end, because it didn't matter who it was, they could not cover the tight end. So that set these expectations for what people wanted to happen. And I felt similarly, well, it's like, oh, okay, he's gonna take a step forward, he's gonna play more of a part. But I think if you have an opportunity here, I'm in agreement with you. This is not somebody that I feel is going to have breakout weeks and is going to be in that top tier where people are going to be, kind of where they wanted him to be. This is another one where it's what you want to happen versus what is happening. And I don't think that's ever going to come to fruition this year.
Yep, I love it. Wonderful. Not even hesitantly in agreement. Good. All right, let's go on now let's talk just very quickly about some rest of season risers. Who maybe after this week do you think is really on the rise in your rankings? Again, I don't know if you do rest of season rankings. I'll do so. I will give some specific numbers as to where I had the guys coming in and where I view them now. But give me a running back here who you feel like, after this weekend especially, is kind of moving up your board for rest of season.
So this will make my Bears fans very happy. This is David Montgomery, who at the beginning of the season, as much as I wanted to put him higher in my rankings, I couldn't, because as talented as he was last year, for whatever reason, Matt Nagy, I hope you're listening, I don't know why he wouldn't go to David Montgomery. I think the talent is there, and it wasn't happening, right? Everybody, again, something people wanted to happen but didn't happen. This season, totally different story, okay? They have, especially coming back, if you watch this game against the Giants, he has this borderline horrific looking injury, right? Where he lands on his neck, he comes back into the game, He's being involved in the passing game, which I wasn't prepared for. And then if you watch the fourth quarter, he broke off, I think, 3 or 4 runs in a row for 10 plus yards. It was unbelievable to watch. The line was playing really well. And I'm very excited about the usage and what I think is going to start to happen more. I thought you pay Tariq Cohen and you're going to see Cohen get used more. That hasn't been the case. So I'm as hesitantly as I looked at this offseason, I said, don't buy into David Montgomery. Don't tell yourself that. I didn't. So he was down further in my rankings. And so now he's elevating, coming off of really a good performance.
Absolutely. I wrote he was one of the most traded players before this week. And I wrote when I was writing up my weekly article about the most traded players, I said, this is your opportunity to buy low on Dave Montgomery before this weekend, because after this weekend, the window's probably going to close. So I completely agree with you. By the way, I'm just going to spoiler alert. My biggest faller in running back is Tariq Cohen, a guy who I was pretty kind of excited about coming in. I thought he would get, and then they give him an extension. Then they're like, we don't want to involve you at all. So Tariq Cohen in my half PPR rankings, which is the ones we do on site, just to be clear, he has fallen from 36th to 45th. So it is a guy who I have no problem dropping if you need to move on. For my riser, I'm going to name a couple of guys here, and some of them are kind of basically showed they were healthy, and that's like a guy like Miles Sanders, who I had 19th. Again, I was worried about the offensive line and whether or not he was fully healthy. He looked great, and I think they, letting Carson Wentz just sling it around is not working for that team. So he's moved up to 9th right now in my rest of season ranking, so that's a 10-spot jump. Aaron Jones is a guy who's moved up from 12th to 8th. Again, I'm just done doubting Aaron Jones. I would love to see him get more snaps even. I mean, he's hovering below 40% of the running back snaps, but you can't argue with that production. And James Conner is a guy who I was like, man, I do not know what this is going to look like. Even when he comes back, I am terrified to see whether or not Benny Snell has carved out a role for himself. He did not. Conner did not look that great against the Broncos. He, got off that, I think it was a 59-yard run at the very end of the game that makes his overall numbers look spectacular. Wasn't that great coming in, but he did get the goal line work. He did score the touchdown. He was the only running back involved. So he has moved from 22nd to 14th in my rest of season ranking. So I just want to put some actual numbers on there so people know exactly where I'm moving them to. Let's go to running back faller for you. You can't have Tariq Cohen. I already took him. So anybody else?
I was gonna say that was the guy.
If that's your guy,
it's all good.
I'm only kidding. You could say
it's all good. I have a few. So I think coming off of you mentioned James Conner, and I think you on the flip side have to have Benny Snell, who I think after week 1 people were excited about what that could look like. But what we said is, you can't make the club from the tub. And that saying shows up in our podcast a lot. And that is, James Conner saw Benny Snell starting to play a big piece for the team, and the no longer in the ice tub, he's got to be in the club. Okay, so he went out there and he played, and Benny Snell, I don't envision is going to be used in the same way you saw in week 1. I think James Conner is going to tough it out. I think you're going to see him out there a lot, and you're going to see him a part of this offense. So he's a guy that I have falling, and the other person really, it frustrates the hell out of me, and that is after a unbelievable week 1 performance for Nyheim Hines. I saw the usage in that game, and I said, yes, dial me in. Marlon Mack out, Jonathan Taylor workhorse back, but you're going to use Nyheim Hines in this way. Week 2, nada, nothing. Doesn't play in the game script that he wasn't involved in it just not at all in what I saw in week 1. Very frustrating. So I think Jonathan Taylor went from, okay, we were excited about him. This was a rookie. Everyone went nuts over. Marlon Mack goes down. It's now his backfield. The usage that he had in week 2, I think it's whatever you can be as far as rising. There's no further opportunity for him to rise. He's cemented himself up there. But on the flip side, Nyheim Hines is a guy who I thought with Marlon Mack out and with that week 1 performance was going to have some opportunities, and I'm out after week 2, so I think you're just going to see the Jonathan Taylor show moving forward.
I co-signed that. 12% of the snaps for Hines, 1 touch, 1 target for, I believe, 4 yards. Just preposterous. Yeah, I agree. And this was not a weekend. Week 1 was not the week to blow all your fab on these running backs with Malcolm Brown and Benny Snell and Nyheim Hines. That is a good thing. Play conservatively a little bit with these situations, because we really, don't overreact. Be like, look how much work Hines got. Amazing. And now you've got, no Marlon Mack. Let's wait and see. We haven't seen any games. We haven't even seen preseason games. So, yeah, completely co-signed there. Let's go to wide receiver. Who's your riser?
My riser, I feel like this one's pretty easy across the board. So much excitement, and I think it's going to continue, and that's Calvin Ridley. I think I think you're going to see that for the rest of the season. I really do, and I know that seems very strange because you got Julio Jones, but Julio takes the one away, and that leaves Calvin Ridley open, and I think he's going to be a guy that I was excited about coming into the season, but I have him now in wide receiver 1 territory, and that's where I'm going to have him moving forward because this Atlanta Falcons team, they're gonna have to throw the ball all the time because even when they were trying to ice the game, they didn't even put in Todd Gurley. He's a non-factor. They're not going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball a gazillion times every single game. And Calvin Ridley, and there's a ton of fantasy value. I'm not knocking Julio. Julio just takes the one, and Calvin gets some opportunities, and he's been targeted a ton in the first 2 weeks. So he's a guy I'm really excited about. I was excited about him coming into the season, but I've definitely risen him up to wide receiver 1 territory, even this week in my rankings ahead of Julio Jones.
I was by no means down on Calvin Ridley coming into the year, but like Tags and Yates were like super, sky high on him. And I was the one trying to be like, well, 2 outside receivers, it's really tough for both of them to have this top 10 value. But yeah, I don't know what you could possibly see from Calvin Ridley that isn't making you do jumping jacks for joy or anything like that. My riser is Deontay Johnson. He was 33rd. He's now 26th. I don't expect he's going to see a 34% target share going forward. That is going to come down. And so he would make the list of sell high candidates, by the way. If people are like, whoa, this is my guy, I got to go for this. The target share is going to come down. But, I mean, he's an elite route runner. He, Ben is throwing the ball kind of more than I expected at the beginning of the season. I thought he would be a little more hesitant. So Deontay Johnson is a guy who just has continually gone from like, all right, I want to take a shot on this guy. I want to roster him, but I don't really want to do it as a guaranteed locked-in starter as a wide receiver 3 to after week 1 being like, well, all right, it didn't look that good in the first half, but man, he got the targets. Let's move him into wide receiver, 3 range. Now he's like, oh God, this guy is going to start pushing wide receiver 2 range. So Deontay Johnson is a guy for me who continues to rise. Again, I think the target share is going to come down, but I still think he's going to provide immense value.
Yeah, I was in too. He was my second guy that I had listed, so I'm glad we're in lockstep today. We're in lockstep today.
Good thing we didn't have Yates on this podcast so we could just rock the house. Who's your wide receiver faller here?
We talked about him already, so I'm just going to briefly mention him, and then I'll give you somebody else, and that's AJ Green. We talked about it up at the top of the podcast, but the other person here that I'm concerned about and dropping a little bit further down is Cooper Kupp. And that is because I was really excited. Our podcast specifically, we were very excited about when you've seen him and Jared Goff, when this offense is firing, it's unbelievable what they've been able to do. But one thing I did caution people, and I was a little bit lower than I would say my co-hosts, but we talked about, okay, what's Sean McVay going to do this offseason, right? What's he going to do? How's he going to, we call him Wonder Boy. What's Wonder Boy going to do in the offseason? What's he going to cook up? And this offense is firing on all cylinders. You look like you've got McVay back in Wonder Boy status, and Cooper Kupp isn't this guy where you would watch Jared Goff and he would drop back and he was looking for Kupp all the time. That's not the case anymore, and that I think is going to be what this offense looks like for the rest of the season because the offensive line's playing better, Jared Goff's playing better, there's more weapons, he's going to both tight ends, he's going to Robert Woods, they've got multiple backs they're excited about and using, and I just don't think Cooper Kupp is going to be that safety net for Jared Goff like he was in years past. So he's fallen. I don't want to say he's still got he's not off my radar. We're still excited about Cooper Kupp, just where I thought he would be for the rest of the season. We moved him down.
Yeah, that's interesting because Kupp is playing the snaps, and that was kind of the worry at the end of last season where he just wasn't on the field nearly as much as he should be. He is on the field now, but he's just not really getting the work that you would like to see. And again, they're running this offense. It's Higbee. Woods didn't get that many targets last game. He did score the rushing touchdown. But yeah, Kupp is an interesting guy for me. I have dropped him a little. Not crazy amount, but I wasn't that excited about him coming into the year because of those concerns. For me, I have mentioned both guys. It is Anthony Miller. He was 42nd, and again, a guy I really liked coming in. He's now essentially off the radar. I have him 57th. And Emmanuel Sanders has gone from basically being like, oh, look at you, Michael Thomas is out. We'll pop you in there as a wide receiver 3 to basically be like, get off my roster because I cannot do this anymore. All right, let's go very quickly with QB risers and QB fallers. So you don't have to go crazy with this because, again, there's not quite as much movement, I feel like, in the quarterback sort of in tight end range. But who's your quarterback riser and then who's your quarterback faller?
Oh, the riser for me is very easy, and I tried to stay off of it, but I cannot any longer, and that's the min stash, man. I'm all in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all in. You got this.
Correct.
Is unbelievable to watch. On a football note, this dude, I can't even describe what I'm seeing on tape with this kid, right? He is taking what we call the Tank for Trevor sweepstakes with Jacksonville, and he's turning it into, this is my damn football team. And I'm like, okay, man, okay. I'm all in. So I'm all in on the min stash. From everything in fantasy, he's going to give you value. I think he's going to continue to sling it. I think they've got, and it doesn't make sense, really. It reminds me of Buffalo a couple years ago where you were watching them play and you're going, I don't really understand how you're winning games, but you keep winning games. I think that's going to be Jacksonville this year. I think they're going to be in every game, and I'm in. Minshew Mania. I'm all aboard. I tried to stay off, but I'm all in, and there's tons of fantasy value there with him.
100% agree. He is my guy as well. I mean, he's just sort of went from, he was a guy who was like, I'm higher than most people, but I couldn't push him much past where I wanted to. He was like the guy I always targeted in 2 QB or super flex leagues. Because I was like, this guy's just going to produce. They're going to be behind. He's great. He's going to sling it. So he was like, I don't know, 19th coming in. Then last week I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to push you up to 16th now, rest of season. Now he's 13th. He's basically a QB1 almost at this point. Love him. Completely agree. Who's your QB faller?
My QB faller is somebody we talked about up at the top of the podcast, and that's Drew Brees. I didn't have Drew Brees, like we said, I didn't have Drew Brees as a guy that I was super excited about, but I know because of that offense and because of what he's been, there was still fantasy value there. After last night, after watching Monday Night Football, I'm out. I'm not seeing what I've seen. I think the arm has deteriorated. I don't think we're going to see him in this high-powered offense. They're going to use Alvin Kamara, and that means you're going to have a ton of fantasy value there. But especially without Michael Thomas, not going to Emmanuel Sanders, it's just where I thought he would be, he's not going to be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Another guy who's dropping for me is Tom Brady. I'm not jumping off the ship yet. He played kind of without Mike Evans in week 1 for all intents and purposes, and then without Chris Godwin in week 2. But I think that they're just into winning football games. Brady doesn't look washed, but he doesn't look that great. So for me, he's always been a guy who's fallen within the top 12 when I'm looking at him, but now he's fallen down from 11th to 15th for me, but completely agree on Brees. How about tight end? Who's your riser?
My riser is Jonnu Smith. Very excited about what I saw in this week, and if you can rise Darren Waller right any higher, you can't really. No. But he's now. I'm looking at him and I'm going, okay, I think you might be number 2. Like, I think at the end of the season, you might be, and you might even flirt with number 1, right? So it's hard to look at that and evaluate anything higher than that. But those are the 2 guys I'm excited about. Jonnu Smith, I was excited about him coming in, but I think seeing the way that Ryan Tannehill, who I was a little concerned on, he was my borderline riser because
me too, absolutely.
Because I was worried. I was like, is what they did last season sustainable? I don't know. I've seen a lot of him with the Miami Dolphins, and it wasn't pretty. So like, what is this gonna be? No, Tannehill looks pretty damn good. I think they're not able to run the football as much as they wanted to with Derrick Henry. So I think you're going to see Jonnu Smith, and he's targeting him in the end zone, which is exactly what you want to see from your tight end.
Yeah, absolutely. Smith was on my list too. I'm sure to Kyle's. Too bad he's not here because he'd be doing cartwheels. The other guy is obviously Dalton Schultz, who I didn't really expect to be all that involved. Coming in, I don't know if he necessarily will be. I don't think you're going to see the Cowboys involved in a crazy shootout like that. But he was essentially somebody who was like, I'm not really expecting you to necessarily just take over the Blake Jarwin role here. So he was essentially like, off the tight end 2 radar, and I thought they'd bring in somebody, but they didn't. He looked good. 33 was my ranking of him last week. It's all the way up to 17 now. So he's a guy who, again, I'm not starting him as a tight end 1, but obviously with the workload that he got, he's a guy who I'm, certainly moving up my board, and it's for pretty obvious reasons given his usage. Let's go to tight end faller. Who do you got?
Austin Hooper, somebody I was really excited about. Thought because of what Baker Mayfield has done with the tight end position, you look at that and you go, oh, obviously you slot in Austin Hooper, going to be this guy who he goes to, he's looking for him. Not the case so far. So very disappointed in this one because I looked at this one in that offense and thought, okay, this could be something really good for how often Baker was looking for tight ends. Has been the case so far. So pretty disappointed in this one.
Especially without David Njoku.
100%.
I know they run 2 tight end sets, but I mean, come on. Yeah, no, I agree. He was a big faller for me from 15 to 19. Also, Chris Herndon, a guy who we keep wanting to make happen.
Yeah,
but
we do.
If you're on the Jets, we're not going to happen here. He's gone from 16th to 20th. I say that as a Jets fan. He's gone from 16th to 20th. So he and Hooper now from 15th and 16th. Hooper and Herndon to 19th and 20th in my rest of season rankings. All right, let's close here with a couple of listener mailbag questions. Again, as we often do, we kind of hit on a lot of these issues already. Like Kyle Johnson had asked, Chris Carson or Joe Mixon rest of season. You answered that right off the top. You said Chris Carson, right?
I sure did. I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Would you pair any of the following wide receivers? This is from Daniel, no last name. Would you pair any of the following wide receivers with David Montgomery to land Jonathan Taylor? Okay. David Montgomery plus Allen Robinson for Jonathan Taylor.
No, too much. You're giving up too much.
You think that's giving up too much? I think that is right. That is about where I come down on that. That's not that crazy. And again, I don't want to trade Jonathan Taylor, just to be clear. If you have Jonathan Taylor, the correct answer is what should I trade for?
No, don't trade it.
That is the right answer.
Just don't trade Jonathan Taylor. I guess on the flip side, you're looking and you're going, okay, if I can cement myself with a running back one, even though I like David Montgomery and I think he could flirt with that area, depending on what the rest of your roster looks like, I guess from that side, you can give up the 2 Bears and especially not knowing if they're going to continue with Mitch, even though they're 2-0 and what that's going to look like if that change ever does happen.
Right.
I could see, I just don't think I don't think anybody's going to trade Jonathan Taylor, and I would advise not to do that.
All right. What if, by the way, another wide receiver you said, would you trade Jonathan Taylor for David Montgomery plus Calvin Ridley?
Ooh, that's a tasty one.
There's you just mentioned Ridley. I thought that one would be closer.
That's a tasty one for me. Depending on what you need, right? If you can get a borderline running back one and for me a wide receiver one moving forward, that's a good trade. I think I would do that. I would do that trade.
I think that is good value. Mm-hmm. I think if I'm rostering Jonathan Taylor, I put up a sign that says the shop is closed because I don't even want to deal with it.
Totally
right?
Totally agree.
That's good value in a vacuum. I think you make that deal. That's probably a trade where I'm like, oh God, please don't make me trade away this guy given his upside. Eric Walsh. I don't know why Eric Walsh is rostering George Kittle, Hayden Hurst, and Jonnu Smith, but apparently he is. Okay. He, of course, wants to deal one of them. He asks, which one should he look to deal? For me, the one is whoever you can get the most value for, really, or in terms of whatever their perceived value is. But, how do you feel about this? For me, it's probably Jonnu Smith, just because as much as I'm moving him up the rankings, I think his perceived value at this point is probably the one that outweighs his actual value, given Kittle's injury, given that Hayden Hurst has had, one good game, but still nobody's really like, oh man, Hayden Hurst is tearing it up. My guess is if you can get a ton for Jonnu Smith, I'd look to see. But personally, my advice would be to throw all 3 out of them on the trade block and just see what comes in. Yeah,
my assumption is that you do not want to trade George Kittle, although I would entertain it because of what that San Francisco 49ers offense is going to look like. And I have my concerns. And so I'm in agreement with you. I think you try and shop all of them and see who you can get the most for. And I'm going to say, even though he's banged up, you're probably going to get something pretty nice for George Kittle back. And I think you'll be okay and comfortable with the other 2, with Hayden Hurst and Jonnu Smith. But if you're not wanting to trade George Kittle coming off of this last week, you gotta try and shop Jonnu Smith, because I think coming off that performance, you're probably going to get something really good back and you'll be just fine playing George Kittle the rest of the season.
I think the problem with Kittle, of course, is that he didn't play this past week. You do have all these problems on that offense. So I think you probably won't get the value that you need. Last one here from Nick Palumbo. Would you trade Chris Godwin for Austin Eckler in a full PPR league? And he adds that he's pretty strong at wide receiver.
I'd love to know what he thinks pretty strong at wide receiver is.
It's true.
That's a tough one for me. the problem with the Austin Eckler stuff is that I don't know what they're going to do here with Tyrod and Justin Herbert. And it honestly is mind-blowing to me because I don't know how the hell you watch that rookie performance and go, yeah, I'm going to go back to Tyrod Taylor now. It doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe it's because I'm super high on Justin Herbert, and also there's almost no fantasy value with Tyrod Taylor playing. So I think you got to hold on to Chris Godwin right now because I don't know what this is going to look like. And it seems like Anthony Lynn is hell-bent on getting Tyrod Taylor back in there. And the fantasy value for the Chargers is not going to be what you saw this last game against the Chiefs. I think you got the tale of two games. You've got two totally different games, two totally different skill sets, and usage is going to be, and I get it. There was excitement, especially I know a bunch of people trying to tell me about Mike Williams coming off that game, and I get it. There's super talented, a lot of excitement, and I get it. Herbert can sling the ball around. I'm hesitant. Anthony Lynn, he's going to play Tyrod. That's what he wants to do. So I wouldn't do it. I think Chris Godwin is a monster, and you haven't even seen him play yet. So I'd hold on to Chris Godwin.
So I'm okay to do it. I think that it's pretty fair value in a PPR league. If you are strong at it, it's fine. And I agree with you. I will give my very quick take on the Herbert Taylor situation. First of all, I don't think Anthony Lynn can come out immediately after, regardless of what the game looked like, and be like, I'm sorry now. I realize that Tyrod Taylor has this issue that goes beyond just a normal football injury. Of course, he had the tightness in his chest. He went to the hospital and say, I'm sorry, Tyrod, you've clearly lost the job. We're going to Herbert. I know, he comes out and says this is Tyrod's job. Maybe it is, but yeah. And this comes from somebody who was not actually that high on Herbert for this year. Man, he looked great. And I don't know how you go back to that either way. Even if it's Tyrod Taylor, I don't, again, you said it early, I don't want to draw too many conclusions just from one game. The fact that Eckler got that only one target from Taylor in that one game, I don't know whether or not you're like, well, great, this is done. He's still got 20 touches, of course. So I'm not running away from Eckler. I do think his value is higher if you get Herbert in there full time. But I do think still at this point, even with Tyrod Taylor, I don't think we can just be like, well, week one, that's what you're going to see. He's not going to be involved in the passing game. You know what I'm saying?
I'm in agreement with you. I just think you haven't seen the best of Chris Godwin yet, and I envision that that's going to be good. But it's pretty even. If you feel comfortable with your wide receivers, as we've said a million times on this podcast, there's not a whole lot of depth at the running back position, so probably not a bad opportunity to add to your arsenal.
Yep. All right. That's it for today. Paige, thank you so much for coming on. Remind everybody where they can find all of you and your great work.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at @the_sports page with an I. And you can find everything we do at thedraftnetwork.com on the TDN Fantasy Podcast. And listen, Kyle Yates, you can't escape me, man. I'm gonna have to come back and talk smack to you next time.
Absolutely. Just put a fake name when you sign in to the thing so he doesn't know it's you. And so we'll be like, oh, sorry, you're stuck here. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Paige, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.
Don't forget to check out our trade assistant over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook for help with your trades, and go to fantasypros.com/offers if you want to get a free subscription to our Hall of Fame package. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We'll talk to you then.